everyone. Welcome to the Totally Well Show. I'm your host, Joyce Strong. The Totally Well Show is a place where we get curious, ask questions, and explore everything to do with health, wellness, fitness, and all the things it takes to help you live the highest quality, most fulfilling life. Today at the Totally Well Show, I have my guest, Jeff Cleghorn, and it's a different show today. It's a different kind of show. I met you, Jeff, as a client to begin with.
That's right.
And so just so that our guests can get to know you a little bit, I'd like to just tell them a little bit about who you are, your family, and what you do for work.
That's very good. I'm happy, very happy to be here, Joyce.
Oh, you're welcome.
So we met about 5 years ago, I think it was, when I came to you with pretty much a weight problem I'd been fighting my whole life. At the time, I had just gotten out of the military, so I served 20 years in the Air Force. I was living here with my family in New Hampshire, 3 daughters, and was battling weight pretty much most of my life, but definitely after getting out of the military, probably the lack of structure. And you helped me understand and find a better relationship with food in my life, which turned out had a tremendous cascading effect on a number of aspects of living. So yeah, that's kind of why I'm here today, I guess, is we can talk about some of that experience that you helped me as a coach, and maybe what I can try to help other people with too.
So after you got out of the military, you went into the workforce. So what are you doing now for work?
That's right. I am a consultant to the government for IT management, information technology.
Okay, great. Mm-hmm. And if anybody wants to reach out to Jeff, you can find him, Jeff Cleghorn, on LinkedIn.
That's right.
So reach out that way.
Please do.
So one of the things I thought we could do today, if this is okay with you, is talk about what a coaching relationship is, because that's what we've had. Is I view you as a whole person who is not broken, and I would like to demonstrate for people how we can, how easy it is to get help and ask for help. So I see you as this accomplished man, 20 years in the Air Force, fought for our country, led men in battle, and now you're struggling with food, like this thing that's, and yet you put down your ego and you reached out and you asked for help.
Right. I think especially for military people, we kind of have the mentality of, I can solve this. But there's, in the case of, for instance, food addiction, there's so much behind it that a lay person or a military person even wouldn't necessarily know and understand. And so that's one of the things that came to mind after not being successful on my own in solving this food problem was, well, I need help. Mm-hmm. And when we started, when you started coaching me, I mean, I hope I wasn't the worst person you ever had, but I imagine it was pretty tough because again, military don't like to be told, don't like to be offered something they can also reject. It's either do this or die, or not, but not, well, you really won't have success unless you lay off those Twinkies, Jeff, and things like that, right? So, but what you had, I think, behind you was a lot of training within people, as a coach would with experience, and also some of that knowledge that isn't just out on the street about the relationship of what you eat, when you eat, the carbohydrates in food, for instance, comes to mind, and that long-term view that, well, my experience and the studies show that if you keep doing this, you will have success, and if you keep doing this, your chances of success are much smaller. And this is not something I can self-administer to myself and find out. I needed guidance and a helping hand. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's part and parcel of what a coach does.
So outside of the guidance, the initial reaching out for help and not seeing that as a weakness, because I know a mutual friend of ours, Bob, mm-hmm. said the military is, people from the military have been taught to see asking for help as weakness.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So being able to shift that to asking for help as a strength.
Right, because you're right, that's a real challenge, probably for everybody, that if there's a stigma attached with seeking help. I think one way, I'm always looking at things in a different way, so one way I might say that is what you're seeking is help in optimizing yourself so that you can achieve the most success in the things that you think are important. So it's more like tuning the car so that it can go faster on less fuel, not taking it to the garage to repair that pinging sound or slow acceleration or something. It's more optimizing so that you can bring value to the things that you think are important in life and not be dragged down by whatever it is that's dragging you down.
That's beautifully said. That resonates completely with again, you're not broken. It isn't about that. It's you want to achieve something. You have these gifts and you want to bring them to other people, which kind of is a good segue for me to do a little coaching with you right now on
Would love
something.
it.
So earlier you talked to me about something you're trying to work on in your skill set as a mentor.
That's right. That's right.
So tell me about that.
We'll do so the great thing about I just turned 56 and I've had some pretty interesting things happen in my life. The great thing about still being alive and having a lot of experiences is that you have a lot to offer to people who are wondering things. Should I go direction A or direction B? What do you think about? And I especially noticed after I got out of the military and you helped me with the weight problem that I was fighting, that when you are centered and don't look like you're clearly fighting an addiction, which I was when I was big, people approach you more and probably give you, I'm estimating, 10, maybe 15 extra seconds that first time you meet them to actually listen to what you're saying and get engaged. And I have found the combination of being older and not looking like I have an addiction, that people come to me a little bit more for guidance or to bounce ideas off, which is wonderful because I want to be able to listen and then offer thoughts or interesting questions that help people come to discovery on themselves where they want to go, right? Coaching. But I'm finding a challenge, and the challenge is as I get older, I'm a little worried about being authentic, staying authentic. Here's what I don't want to do, and I know we talk about what you not want to do is not as good as answering what you want to do. So I want to be authentic, and the way I'm going to define being authentic and relevant in people's lives, here's what I don't want to do, and that's tell the same stories over and over again. I don't want to become that guy that trots out his story about the low level through France or the rocketing in Iraq. I want to be relevant and fresh, and that's a challenge for me, I think, to stay that way. So I think I could use your help maybe in trying to stay relevant and authentic as I get older.
Can you tell me a little more about what you're afraid of with telling? So when you started to talk about those like old stories, I was starting to get curious. So what are you afraid they sound like? Those stories.
I think it's possible that they might come across as, these are things that are relative in his life, but not really relative in my life. My chances of going to Iraq are pretty low at this point. So I don't know that other than them being interesting as something that not everybody has seen, it's hard to have relevancy as do I really want to marry this girl and start a family, or am I still sowing my wild oats? That has nothing to do with whether you're going to survive in combat or not, right? So it's hard. It's that worry that it's hard to maybe for people to relate to some of the things I've seen and where they're a rollicking good story. How does it help? How does it mentor? How does it coach?
Very good question. How can you, and I think you have the answer inside, I really do, how can you take those experiences and find the common thread? So relate your challenge in the field to your challenge in a social situation or your decision about food. Let me think if I can give you an example. I was listening to Jocko. I don't know if you know who he is. So he's a Navy SEAL trainer.
Gotcha.
So he's got...
Understand the context now.
Okay. And he was giving the example of scenarios. I can't tell you what to do, A or B or C, because if one of those goes wrong, you're going to say, Jocko told me. And you need to be able to think, not out there with you. I'm not out there with you at the restaurant either. I'm not out there with you on the first date. So I need you to understand strategy over scenario so that you can adapt.
Right.
So how could you take your experience and maybe adaptability in the field?
That's a very good point. I do think that while at the surface there aren't a lot of similarities with flying an airplane fast to the ground and going to the grocery store, but there are probably similarities in the way we critically think about things and when we don't critically think about things. So sometimes going to the grocery store, we might be on automatic pilot, to use more aviation analogies, and not thinking at what choices we need to make as we purchase food. Just like if you find yourself in a military situation or in an airplane where you're not thinking ahead, you're going to get in trouble really fast, and it's going to either be expensive or deadly. And so, maybe there's some ways that I could use by talking about when things were on automatic pilot versus actually, no kidding, thinking through and relying on the experience and training for the military, the coaching and knowledge gained in research on your topic of the food, for instance, to bring that to bear in the Stop and Shop, and not. And I particularly like the aspect of the kind of the guided questions. Well, what do you think about when you're in the grocery store? I like that technique. It resonates with me. It doesn't work with everybody, but I think that maybe a challenge I'd need to rise up to is how can I, how can I turn the nudging into a series of questions based on some of this, what we're uncovering here is the applicability of some of my experience in the military with what we do when we struggle or don't know we're struggling with an aspect of life here.
Right, whatever it is. Part of authenticity, I think, for me, when I get to know you, is knowing who you are. That's why at the beginning of the show today, I wanted to have our viewers know who you are. You have kids, you have a granddaughter, so generally what you do for work, where you've been. And I think when you tell that story, if it's in context, it's who you are.
No, I suppose that's true. I concentrate so hard on listening that sometimes I don't understand that maybe you need to set the context of who you are and where you come from to help who you're talking with have a handle on you. We have to have handles on the things that we bring into our lives. We just have to. We hope they're accurate and flexible, but they got to have something. You're going to judge however it goes.
So do you see a difference then between just telling an old story, like, listen, it's all about me, or a little general background to where you've been and the reason why you know this,
right,
and why? And so I'm now as the person being coached by you, I'm like, wow, this guy's been to war. He's flown planes. He's done things I can't even imagine. I'm going to listen.
That's that with that authenticity, it's just has to be stated as a matter of fact. I mean, I was lucky to do the things I do, but tons of training. It wasn't just toss the keys to the jet. Hey, go have fun, right? But it is important that when I think it's important for all of us with our really interesting experiences that we lay them out as a matter of fact, not as a brag or as necessarily a plea for help if it was a really tough thing and you need help. Kind of circles back on that. Asking for help is good, though. That is good.
But I get what you're saying. It's like,
story.
for me, I would say, yeah, I raised 5 kids on my own as a single mother. I'm a breast cancer survivor. I play hockey. By the way, it's just who I am. It's my fabric.
Those are 3 heroic things, by the way, that I love about you, and it's not something that it's something to be proud of, and it's something that is important for people who deal with you to understand, right? Because it shaped who you are. So I see that I should probably be maybe a little less worried about coming forth with that kind of background on me, because I don't want to sound anything other than, you know, happy, blessed, fortunate to have done what I've done. And I can't imagine raising kids on my own. I can't change my granddaughter's diaper without really having to, okay, here we go. Right? So, relying on that background. Take that hill, change that diaper. So, yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you for the acknowledgement, and I think you see then the way you can bring it in the context that you want. So the other thing you talked about was being relevant.
Relevant, right.
So how can you make the connection relevant? Because I know what you want to do is how do you guided questions, I think you use, like.
Right, and the relevancy challenge is again, you know, the things are so different in my background than what we encounter on the street today or walking around, at least in most cases, and also the demands that we met in our 20s and 30s compared to what people in their 20s and 30s are meeting now. There are some similarities, and there's so many differences. Oh my gosh, the access to information, the expectation for social transparency, the expectation for immediate communication and immediate response really changes a lot of things fundamentally. We're all still trying to figure out what am I good at, who do I want to be around, and how am I going to feed and house myself. Those are, you know, central questions for the 20 and 30-year-old, but the context of the world they live in and having to deal with, you know, Facebook, Instagram. Nobody watches television news anymore, but everybody watches the 40,000 channels of entertainment that's out there. How do I understand that and take that into the line, in my case, the line of questioning I would ask about people's experiences in life to help them discover who they want to hang out with, what do they want to do with this next few years of their life, and what are the things that are important to them now. You know, help them to self-discover those things. It's tough to do when I'm not, you know, an Instagram user, or at least not an active Instagram user.
So where's your resistance? What do you?
I think it's time. I'm pretty involved in my work, and then I have, you know, this granddaughter and 3 daughters that I'm always interested in what goes on a daily basis with them, and so that you know, the combination of those things takes a lot of time. I do, you know, you military and you helped me find the importance of fitness, and I do commit to fitness an hour at a time, 3 or 4 times a week, and I find that that makes me healthier and happier on numerous levels. Hey, add all those things together, I don't have time to search around on Instagram and see everything that's going on, or look at every good YouTube video that has content that I'm really interested in, but I just don't have time. I suppose like everything with time, right? You have to manage the time you have, and you are going to do the things that are either important if you are wise, or whatever's the most interesting if you need to go on autopilot for a little bit, right? So I suppose maybe if I were to be honest with myself, if this is important to me, I need to make time to understand the social fabric of the people I deal with, and get a handle on that more than I do now.
There's a big change going on, and I think you addressed it well, with kind of in a broad way, with where people are getting their education and information from. We didn't have that, and now I'm older than you are by 10 years, so we didn't have that. We didn't have computers. We had books. We had old books. We didn't have access to instant information. So one of the advantages I had in helping you was I was more forward thinking than other people my age, and so I was tapping into education beyond Tufts and beyond Simmons, where I got my formal education, to podcasts
Right.
to what was online and what, eventually podcasts, that's what's really hot now. So there, what, in thinking about how you could perhaps tap into some of that, what might you, where might you start, at least carving a little piece of time?
Right. Well, I think that what I would want to do is find a few sources, both the infrastructure like an Instagram or YouTube, but then also people who curate content to the extent where I know I'm not getting as much fake news maybe as if I just Googled myself. But then again, not trying to shape my line of thinking with their choices of what to show me and what not to. And that's, so there's where you need a coach, a valued curator to offer up content. And subtly, I've noticed that you've started doing that with me and showing me, offering me some content that that you think would be relevant to my life through podcasts and I think some blogs. So I need to, and to be honest, I haven't engaged yet, and I need to. I think that's probably a key to trying to use a small amount of time to find the relevant.
So think about your military training. And you've got all this stuff out there. Some of it is dangerous and some of it is friendly. You don't know what they're pulling out of their trunk. It could be a camera, it could be changing a flat tire, or it could be, I don't know, some big weapon that's going to blow your head off. So you got to choose. You got to think. You got to be able to read and react.
That's
right?
And the barriers to entry to putting just garbage information on the internet are so low now. I mean, it's so easy to post content that that we have this fake news problem, which I've been reading some things from Mark Twain, and fake news has been around. I mean, he's got that famous quote, right? The news of my death is highly exaggerated, or something like slightly exaggerated. Fake news has been a problem forever. It's just so easy now to throw it out there in the world through our social network and the way the internet works.
But we're smart. I mean, we can read through situations.
Right. I think you're right. I think that's part of it. It is again, though, packaged. Some of this fake news is packaged so well.
True.
I mean, because the ability to package it is made so easy to access now, freeware. So yeah, it's a challenge. And then the people we're talking with, it's a challenge. It's just a challenge to them to filter out the truth from maybe the slightly exaggerated death of Mark Twain, right? It's a challenge we're all facing, and I don't know how to solve it, but I do know that it confuses me a lot, and it's one of the things that makes me not want to fight that relevancy battle. I don't want to try to figure out what's right here on this Facebook post or this blog.
What if there's something in there though that you're missing that could? Right.
That's the challenge. Yeah. So. Yeah, you see, so there goes Joyce. She's asking the tough questions, making me, if this is what I really want to do, I've got to commit the time to it and hold myself accountable.
And there's tons of stuff, but you don't have to read. If I listen to one or two or three podcasts in the day, on my drive from here to there, and oh my gosh, I want to connect with that person now. Like I listened to one this morning with Donovan McNabb, the quarterback, and I found out that he is retired, that he likes ice hockey, like I do.
Excellent.
And that he has an organization related to diabetes, which is what I do.
Oh, brilliant.
So, and I learned that on a 20-minute podcast.
Right.
With somebody who I know and trust, who I've met in person, and who I know and trust. Over time, I've come to know and trust because I had to make the effort to weed out, so.
Right, in this case, he was a trusted source. You listened for an open message, the blog, and then in that you found some gems, and now you're curating it as a recommendation to me. So this is beautiful.
Yeah.
And this might be part of an aspect of coaching in the 21st century that's a little different than what we were doing 10 years ago.
And what I see these books or podcasts or information available to me, it's my new classroom. And there are some 20-year-olds out there now, 20 to 30-year-olds who are brilliant. I
think you mentioned a couple to me the last time we got together.
Yeah. The Hyperconscious podcast kids, they're my kids' age, so I call them kids, but they're 30. And Alan Lazarus and Dave and Kevin Lamaris. Palmieri, sorry. And that was a high school name that came to me. They remind me of high school kids. So, but they're brilliant. They've read books that, they've just gotten their information from other sources beyond their school because they've tapped into it and they see it's there. And so if there's resistance from us because we're still in paper books, not that we shouldn't be still, but that's the only place we could get information from.
Right.
And in the classroom, in the military, and your formal training.
Right. I think all of us feel like if it's printed, at least it's in a bound book, especially one at a library, there's some value, some level of scrutiny that was applied to the content before it got the binding and got thrown in a library, which is not always true, but it kind of comes with the packaging.
It's
right?
the story we told ourselves.
Yeah, right.
And it became,
This must be truth because it's written on a book that was printed and published and carried in a box to a library and put on a shelf with a Dewey Decimal Number on it. So, that's got to be authentic. What's more authentic? And now we're in this world where we have the ability for great people like you mentioned, or people with really innovative ability to synthesize information from multiple sources and present it in a blog or a post that provides interesting content done in a matter of minutes or an hour, right? I mean, the reading, but background, but that's powerful and also dangerous about the fake news aspects of it, and that's where your curation comes into it.
Or your personal experience as a human being on this earth with all that you've done to be able to discern that doesn't resonate with me. It's not a common thread. It's not something I'm hearing from multiple sources. You know, if I hear all these people who I've come to trust saying the same thing, then I put it in my toolbox. But when I hear a lot of controversy, it stays out there, and I'm not going to continue to listen to that.
Right.
So I've come to trust my ability to curate, and I think we all have that. Certainly you do.
Well, I do have some pretty strong filters, and again, there's just this challenge as you get older, right? When do the filters become kids these days? They don't understand. They're everything was given to them too much. I remember hearing that when I was a kid.
And that's what you're afraid of.
I am. I don't
you
want
don't
to be
that
voice. Yeah.
And you're not.
Yeah. Well, I am still hyper aware of not wanting to go that direction. I think one thing that would be good. For instance, you've mentioned your 20 somethings and the value they add. I think it would be interesting for me to find people in their later life that I could resonate with, who are still actively engaged in the filtering, the curating, bringing in the new information, but not just saying kids these days. They're actually saying, hey, here's a viewpoint that's really, really interesting. It calls to question this basic tenet of public housing or socialization of housing or medicine or whatever, that forces people my age to not just say, well, the government's really lousy at medicine, so I really don't want the government in medicine. Well, that's what I've painted with a really broad brush there. Maybe that's not really applicable these days, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to the flight surgeon 20 years ago, gave me a Band-Aid for the broken leg, and that kind of thing, right? That's not all government medicine is that way. So so maybe trying to find some people more in our generation or later who are still actively engaged in curating.
Yeah, they're out there for sure.
Yeah,
the one I mentioned, Dave Meltzer, he just he's doing a fundraiser for his 50th birthday, so I happen to know he's 50. And he has an Instagram account, and he has the playbook, and he stays very relevant. And in fact, I met him at an event in Boston, and the group of people who came around him, like the Pied Piper, were mostly men in their 20s to 30s.
Can I tell a story? Because you just mentioned something that was kind of interesting to me. So I turned 50.
And we're about out of time, so this will wrap it up.
Okay. Well, it was in Istanbul, Turkey, when I turned 50. I was there on business, and I went out the night I turned 50, and in the downtown Istanbul, gorgeous city, very very historic, and stopped at a cafe where a guy with silver hair was at a DJ table curating the best collection of chill music with all these people around him. And I had a drink and listened to him, and it was just wonderful, nice summer night. And all I could do was walk up to him and say, this was great. And he said something in Turkish, which was probably like, yeah, pay your bill and don't forget to tip your waiter and waitresses or something like that, right? But couldn't have our moment. But there was a guy who resonated with me as an older person, curating some really good music. By the way, the next day, as I was walking around, I heard a lot of Turkish shouting in the distance, and I thought, wow, this is an interesting time to be in Istanbul. And the first police van went by, going towards the shouting. I thought, that's a little unusual. Why would? And then the second police van went by, and that's when we went back to the hotel. That's that years of experience training me to get away from the riot that was going on over there, listen to the cues, stay alive.
Yeah. Well, we overstayed our welcome a little bit here as far as the length of the show. So hopefully we'll get the whole story in. We'll see. Mm-hmm. But thank you for coming on to the Totally Well Show today.
This was great, Joyce.
Yeah.
Thanks.